take a look at this and say, yeah, I see that in leaders, or my leader, or a leader, and we can address it, maybe something like that. I'm not sure how we can help you change a leader, but if a leader sees this, he knows what we're talking about. If he's any kind of leader at all, because these are real. These are not. I've been a leader since 1976, 6, yeah. So in a church, so I've been around a little bit as leaders go. All these things are very real.
I was kind of thinking about that before we kicked this off. I was thinking some of this kind of feels sort of abstracty on the surface. We're talking about like culture, and that's something that you could put your arms far away and try to dissect and look at. But the reality is like, no, we're actually like, this is very real stuff.
We're in it.
That's happening. And if you don't pay attention to it, you're going to get sideswiped. And one of the things I love about the Bible is it really tries to tell you, like, it's just sort of related. There's some overlaps, but it's not like a perfect fit. But that the Bible tells you, like, you should be very cautious about interpreting events differently than the way that the Bible is telling you them. And the reason is the Bible it's trying to be, it's this authoritative source that it's like, this is really what these things are. And if you view them from another light, you're going to go down the wrong path. And I think that's part of why we're talking about these pitfalls, because you could just dismiss, to kind of pull it back to our previous topic, you could kind of dismiss and ignore that, oh, this is culture, and just say, oh, it's this person. But then there's another person that's doing it, and then like another person, and then somebody who's not from that group that's doing it too, and you're missing the forest for the trees because you don't realize, well, that's culture.
Yeah.
And that's why we're bringing these things up.
I laugh at that because you miss the trees for the forest and you miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah, that's true. Either way.
Yeah, can go either way. So the next one that we were talking about that was on the list that we had was on laziness. I don't know a better word to put it. Not just lazy, but lackadaisical attitude. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in Bible school, my first preach, you got to preach, and they judge you on your preaching.
Oh.
They didn't have any trouble with what I said, but they said, "You're so casual, we fell asleep."
Casual.
And I went, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, you need to be vibrant and excited and into it, and you're just kind of, hey, this is it, this, that." And that really hit me. After that, I was never casual, laissez-faire attitude. I was pointed and on purpose, certain thing. In fact, which kind of goes with this, my wife says this all the time, I always do things on purpose. I never do anything that's not on purpose. I'm an on-purpose guy.
Well, I'm sure you do things that are not purposeful, but you try to be very purposeful with the things that you're doing.
Right. I mean, there are purposes for why I do things, but generally, if I decide to do something, it's on purpose or something that's on purpose. And even if it's a small thing, she go, "Why do you do that?" I go, "I did that for a reason."
Yeah.
I did that for a reason. But laziness, lackadaisical attitude, casual, laissez-faire kind of thing affects a leader because you're not taken seriously. You're kind of like, he's not really into it, whatever. And I don't want, as a leader, I wouldn't want that. I would want someone to say, he's serious, he means this, and he's after it. And laziness you don't do your homework, so you're lazy too,
One of the ways the Marine Corps describes this, they call it enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And so the term, they have the leadership traits, and one of them is enthusiasm. And the leadership traits, just to be like kind of straight with what it is, these are really the things that build influence with other people. When you display these things, it starts to push you out as a leader. And it's very difficult to be a leader if you are not enthusiastic.
That's exactly what I'm...
I've come to find about this that... And sometimes, some people, I consider myself to be often very enthusiastic person. Not all the time, but the reality is you still have to attempt to display enthusiasm even when you don't want to display enthusiasm. And that's part of why we're saying this. Because everybody's enthusiastic from time to time on something, but do you consistently display it? And are you going out of your way you don't want to be enthusiastic, are you going and doing it? Because the amount that you can do that is the amount that you will be able to consistently show up. And even the reality is I don't believe that people are so X-ray laser-eyed that they're so paying attention to you that they could see whether or not you're faking it or not.
Yeah.
I do believe to some extent that you can kind of fake the funk at least a little bit, and that's going to get over some of the lulls. But I know for me personally, like you mentioned laissez-faire, I have a much more laissez-faire leadership style than many other people. But I do know that there's some problems with that.
Yeah, it can be. And you know the word, there's a word, enthusiasm has a Greek word in it meaning God connected. Enthusiasm comes from a Greek word that means God connected. There's God in it. And so it has to be a little bit more exciting than, you know, I remember a comedian used to say that if you have any kind of, if you don't, I met Christians that the joy in their life is not enough to mug a squirrel. And he's got a point there. He's got to have some kind of enthusiasm and excitement for somebody to say, hey, he's got something there. You know?
I mean, to me, enthusiasm is like, I attribute most of my early success in leadership actually to enthusiasm, like 100%. And what that looks like is I'm the kind of person that goes really deep on a topic, way beyond what any other person is going to do. So for like just a pinch, right? You can see like with like this camera stuff. Can you imagine how many hours I put in on cameras?
I wish you could see it.
Way more than most people would be. Or like these microphones. To your point about like intentionality, I specifically chose these microphones out of the entire plethora of ones out there for a lot of different reasons. I used to be in multiple bands. I used to run all of the equipment. I used to do cameras for like skateboarding, so I would do all the recording and I would do all the editing. And to some extent it calls me, but I noticed probably later, but I realized that many of the times my early leadership, especially in music, came from the fact that I was really motivated about it. So I'm like, I'm into this. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. And other people who are not enthusiastic about something, they don't really know where they're going. They very easily latch on because they just see the natural human tendency of like, well, it must be good because they're doing it again and again and again.
Yeah. And if you have laziness, you're not going to do that.
No, definitely not.
You just I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people who are, this is important because I think it has to do with that enthusiasm. Some people are pressure oriented. They feel the pressure, they'll go for it.
Yeah, I agree.
But if they don't feel the pressure, they don't go for it.
Yep.
And so what happens is, or some people get tense and then they go for it. I'm all tense about this, I better do. But, and that's kind of like pressure oriented. And if they're pressure oriented, what if there's no pressure? Then it's laissez-faire. Then it's
this is very true.
That's a danger that we can fall into. We got to be careful about that. Studying to show thyself approved is a scripture that means really if you're studying to show yourself approved, you got to do a little bit more than the normal person, little bit more than the normal out there because nobody takes you seriously. And well, he's just talking. He's not really. It just so happens that I'm going to be doing the communion for a month.
Oh, you are
at the church, and I'm not taking that lightly. I'm going into this pretty deeply.
That's cool.
You'll see if you see it. You'll see because I've been studying it, reading it, thinking about it, and I feel like I got a couple things, and I have to work at it to get a couple things to share with people because I think it should be more than just a sacrament and we just do it because we have to do it. There's a little bit more than that. And last time I shared about it, it's got to be an encounter with Jesus and this leadership that we're talking about. You have to have an encounter with God to some degree. You know, otherwise you're just another person talking.
Well, I do have an answer to that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about vision, like how does one get vision? And you definitely have to have perspective. But if you don't have vision, there's a first vision that you have. Go get vision. And so in the time until you do have that, your job is really to seek it out, to go find it because it's there. It's somewhere. But
absolutely.
I assure you it's probably not where you're at right now. More because unless it's hitting you and or you were driven to that space or whatever, it's out there. It's somewhere. And I'll say in the last couple days, pretty much since Tuesday, I deep dived into Ukraine, and I've generally kept an arm's distance from this since 18 months ago, or I guess almost 2 years ago now. I've kept kind of a distance to it to some extent because of things I have to do. I know some aspects of it and I've followed a little bit, but then I went deep dive, and we have this tool that I don't think people actually understand the breadth of YouTube. It's like beyond most people's comprehension what you can consume on YouTube. I did not know, maybe you know this, there are professional foreign fighters who are YouTube vloggers who literally travel from war to war as a frontline independent fighter, and they vlog it. And you can go watch that right now on YouTube. I watched probably 8 hours of this footage and just
No way.
use it as a time to observe this person, that whole space I know nothing about, which is like foreign fighters. And the first thing I'll tell you is every single one of them was a Marine. Every one of them was a Marine. And I'm not surprised. And what was super funny about it is there were some other people. Again, there's that kind of space there. We'll call it independent war. And then there's some layers around it. So there's like commentary. So there's people who do like interviews with these people. And then, there's different kind of aspects to it. Every single person involved in that was a Marine. To include, there were Royal Marines and there were Australian Marines. It was just every single person was a Marine.
Wow.
So I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised by that, but it's just funny. I love coincidences or like how things, I find it funny that a stereotype can just keep being true, but I've said this for a long time. But going through that, I gained a lot of perspective back to this topics very specifically. One of them, he created it's almost like a company where he takes other people's videos and he has it as an outlet. So he has his own, he did his own, and he's doing like training, and he's met a bunch of people in Ukraine. And so he takes their live cams and he puts as part of his channel. And listening to this person, he went to, again, like to set like who this kind of person is. He was in the Marines. He left after a couple of years, and then he got injured and got like separated. He then on his own accord went to Syria and joined like local militias and like was fighting the Turkish. And then he did that for 18 months and then left from there and went to Iraq and then joined some other group in Iraq to basically fight like the Turkish and some other types and fight ISIS. And so this is not like a US sanctioned thing. He just went and did it. And then he took like a small break, and then Ukraine came out. And so then he went to Ukraine and he did a tour in Ukraine. And this person, the first thing I could tell you as a very distinct difference between that person and almost every single person in the military, they have 100% intention. They are there for a reason, and there's not a damn thing that's going to stop them from going.
It's on purpose.
It is absolutely on purpose.
And I think, being that we're talking about this leadership kind of thing, if I think you're really into it, then I'm paying attention.
Yes.
You could be on the wrong topic. You could be boring. You could actually be boring.
Right.
I've seen pastors who are monotone, but they are intended on purpose doing something, and that catches me. I want to know that he's after this and on purpose. He's doing this intentionally. Even if I don't agree with him totally.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
I see, like a guy like that, I want to meet.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? Those kinds of guys are
to talk about this, like, I think after watching a couple hours, I'm like, should I go to Ukraine? I'm like, no. But the impact of that person and his testament and the demeanor and the nature of who he is, he's creating desire inside of people all the way on the other side of the world to go and follow in his footsteps.
And this is why leaders, you can't be lazy.
No.
If he's one thing, he's not is lazy.
No, oh Lord, no.
I mean, and he's enthusiastic, and he's on purpose.
Yes.
And all those leadership. I mean, the pitfall is to be lazy and lackadaisical and quit.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff. But that doesn't fit in the Christian leader.
For another time, his downfall is that he's tactical and not strategic. At some point, he could eventually get to that. Certainly, if you join like the military, they try to like kind of fold you and move you along through operational and strategic to where you're doing bigger things, you're thinking bigger. Like this topic we're talking about, he never has any mind or intention that he could be using this as a funnel to do more of what he's trying to do. So, okay, he's trying to fight the Russians or imperialists or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah.
That avenue is actually a way. He just thinks like, no, none of these people should come. Only these certain kinds of people. But it's like, bro, you could set them on the path that they could actually go help you accomplish it. But he doesn't have that mindset. That is what happens when a person, and I know that mindset very well, that's when you're a little too tactical. You're solo. People are following you, but it's hard for them to follow you because you're not being an actual leader who's like now shepherding. He's not shepherding.
And these are things you don't hear out there. I mean, I don't care who you are. I've been around. I've listened to 40 million churches. I've been all over the world. You don't hear this.
No, you don't.
I don't care what you tell me. You don't hear it.
No.
And so we don't really understand. Leadership is a big topic.
It is a big topic.
Big. I mean, you wrote a book about it. I've read. I can't tell you how many books I've read on it.
Oh yeah.
And so I know it's 100.
I have, I think, what is it? 1, 2, 3, at least 3. I thought I had 4 copies of the Tao Te Ching. You ever read the Tao Te Ching?
I don't know if I have.
It's you would call it like the proverbial Bible for Taoism, and it's written. Have you ever read The Art of War?
Yeah.
So it's like that, where it's like,
Art of War.
2-3 lines, it's super pithy.
Yeah.
About influence or this or that, and reading it. I have 3 copies of it, so I could try to pull out multi-thousand-year-old information on influence that people have figured out in different kinds of ways. I mean,
and that's really important too. You brought this up, and maybe we'll bring it up another time. But we talked about this before about being well read.
Yeah.
When you just said it's super pithy. Before I would never even know what the heck you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
But because I've read so much and saw the difference, I went, yeah, it was
pithy.
Yeah.
you read the sentence, you can read it 7 million times, and you get like a little more out of it. It's very deep. Some of it is not that deep. You can over deep something, but the Bible is a good example of this. I'm a little skeptical that, let's say, an English translation of the Old Testament, I'm a little skeptical of how pithy it is. Yeah. And I mean very specifically like the story components. Yeah. It's very straightforward. It's supposed to be very straightforward. I do know, but I don't know to the extent that the way that the language in Hebrew is written in certain kinds of things that you'd have to know deeply about it.
And you have to have some teaching, some understanding of the mindset.
Yes, you do.
The Hebrews didn't just talk to talk. They had a mindset. They had a cultural mindset, they were living under Roman rule. These guys that wrote for the New Testament, and so
right.
Everything's involved there. It's a.
Here's an example. I was telling, I think my mom or somebody that I was reading. I think it was Proverbs. I think I was reading Proverbs, and it might have been the last proverb. Don't quote me. It's either the last proverb or last Ecclesiastes. I think it was Proverbs. And I was reading it, and I was remarking about some nature of like the content to it. It's actually like a pretty long one. And my mom told me that it's like, like she's reading online, like, Solomon wrote this where every single line starts with a letter, the next letter in the alphabet. I was like, really? So then I went and looked at it. I was like, I'll be darned. It sure does. It's right here.
How'd she do that? Yeah.
So just the reality is there's a lot of that hidden stuff that's actually there that it's a little difficult, even as like let's say an elementary Hebrew reader like myself is just not going to pick up.
Well,
but the New Testament is very pithy.
Very, yeah.
It's very pithy.
It's very straightforward, though, I think. I think we miss a lot of things by overcomplicating it. And I got a guy that's saying no woman can be pastor or pastoral at all, that only men. I'm going, I'm just trying to.
I don't know where they get
please,
that. I don't know where they get that
Can
from.
you do a little better than that? I mean, come on, just a little bit better. 9 or 10 women pastored me before I really got rolling. Okay? I mean, I'm sorry, but they did. They gave me feed. They fed me. They taught me. They nurtured me. They brought me in the Holy Spirit and that kind of thing. I mean, these are women.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to back up a little bit and not get so. I don't know. Narrow-minded.
I wouldn't call that. I personally would not call that pithy. I would say that that's a very shallow reading of something.
Yeah, it's narrow-minded.
Pithy would be like
it's deeper.
You look at the parable of the sower. That is a wildly pithy parable with analogies.
Full of stuff.
I mean, just the amount that you can take. Okay, seeding on certain ground, and the main lesson there really is about. There's different kinds of people out there that are going to receive the gospel in different kinds of ways. Yeah. And to some extent, it's encouraging you to be fertile soil rather than rocky soil or whatever, and not to be, allow the gospel to like spring you instantaneously, but you don't grow any roots. Yeah. There's all that kind of stuff. But it also tells you, this is my own personal kind of, we'll say testament to reading it. When I read this was not written by a man. I mean, it was written by a man, but these parables are perfect. And the parable of sower, the number of examples I could give that are in a similar thing, if you abstract it out a little bit, it's how a message works. That you pass out any message to any person, even this, what we're talking about now. For the people that are going to explode up and go try to take immediate action on it, they will have shallow roots. Yeah. There's other people where they actually can't watch what we're doing right now because they have kids tugging on them. They're doing this, that, and the other. And as a result, the weeds are crowding out the message. And so they can't actually listen to it. They may be listening or watching it very briefly without even sound on. And then there's other people where they hear it. They've heard the same stuff a million times, but it's going to take a while for them to actually go off with it. But that's how it works.
Yeah. I agree. One of the reasons why I avoided the parables, because I always felt like I didn't say enough about it, because there's so many truths there.
There's a lot.
And it reminds me that Jesus said, I am the truth. Truth is not a doctrine or a bunch of written. Truth is a person. If he said, I am the truth, he must have meant it. And everywhere he brought truth. And so when he gave a parable, we're talking, the truth was talking. You know? So it was deep. He was giving across a lesson, but it was truth. And so I always felt challenged by that.
I think about these, like, we'll say this is kind of the analytical mind looking at it. I think about Venn diagrams. And so a Venn diagram is you draw a bunch of circles, and then you're like, it's really interesting, the things where only this has in common, and this, all of them have in common, and stuff like that. And when I look at these parables, what makes it deep is the number of Venn diagram circles that all circle on the same thing. The parable is the circle that's all there, and the number of circles that cross it is it is what it is. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well,
I've read the books, dude. They're all right there. That shelf right there is probably the most influential thought of humankind is on that second shelf right there. It's all right there.
You're ahead of me on that. I did our war, and that was interesting.
It's a great read.
I learned a lot of things there. Yeah,
it's really small. I avoided that book for years because I thought it was like some thick tome that's complicated to read. No, it's very straightforward.
Yeah, it was a good book. Even though we're not talking about that, again, a leader. What we talked about before is if he's not well read to some degree, he doesn't know what he's talking about because the things are going to come up. I mean, they're going to come up in church. They're going to come up in life. They're going to come up at work, in business. Stuff's going to come up. And you're going to look like an uneducated fool, if I can say that, by going, I don't know, I didn't read that, I don't know, I didn't know that, I didn't know. You're not up on anything. And if you're not up on things, I don't know how you get enthusiastic. I think like
that's actually a really good point too. I would totally agree.
Yeah, like people just got into a new pastor and they say, well, they're still on their honeymoon. It's true. There's a honeymoon process or time when you don't see their faults, they don't see your faults, and you're kind of enjoying one another. Then things begin to crop up, and the honeymoon's over. And you better be on your toes because they will eat you alive, but even by default. Not because they're trying to eat somebody alive, but because they're going to say, wait a minute, we got to have more than this.
Well, let's get deep on this because this is now we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of this. we already have talked about, and people have, they warn this stuff. They don't really warn it. They just say it. To me, it feels like it's just like a surface statement, something to remember. Bro, we need to tattoo this on our arm. People do what you do and not what you say. And almost all of leadership is your actual behavior. And so the reason why enthusiasm, it creates enthusiasm in other people to go towards that thing, because that thing, they don't know what it is, but there's something there because that person is driven toward it. But to your point about the honeymoon, as it long enough of their behaviors and the way that they see the world starts to permeate into the people, and the bad things about you will permeate in them.
And you, the leader, have got to make a decision what to do about that when it happens, because you can't just say, well, whatever.
No.
That doesn't work that way.
You have to, at a minimum, I think you can only mitigate it. Like you can attempt to mitigate the damage of it by, I would say at a minimum, by being...
Well, that's still doing something.
I do think it is. I don't think that you can stop yourself from being your bad habits. I don't think you can stop them, but I definitely think you can be aware in yourself, which can help mitigate you doing it sometimes. 2, you need to warn other people. And at a minimum, just that saying like, hey, and what that would create is awareness. And awareness, you have a chance. But like that one guy I was talking about in Ukraine, he does not know what we're talking about.
No.
He doesn't. I do know that he knows at like this smaller level, but he will never take responsibility for the people he's actually killed in Ukraine. Not him personally, but he caused to go over there who should not have gone over there, who he never had a plan to bring them over there and shepherd them through that.
Yeah.
It was always going to be the case that he was going to encourage people, but he has not. I know there's other people there, more of that kind of story. There's another person who is much more responsible, who's a similar kind of person, but he's like a combat medic. And he ended up he gets the bigger picture, maybe not the strategic picture, but he gets a way bigger picture. And he created a training institute, and they've trained thousands of people over there. So instead of just sending people into the meat grinder, which I assure you that's what they were doing.
Which you don't hear about.
Oh, you definitely don't hear about it.
You don't hear about this. And this is the thing, your caption there, Catch the Vision, and I told you this before, there's some stuff that we can teach.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher. I love to teach stuff, but I can't teach stuff that you have to catch.
Yeah, you got to catch.
You got to catch it.
Yeah, you got to catch.
And if you haven't caught the vision, whatever vision, well, what vision? Catch what vision? Well, the one that the leader has, he's trying to impart to you.
Yeah.
Or the one that is biblical that you have to get a hold of. Without a vision, the people perish. They lose interest. And that's got to be caught. I mean, you can impart it. You can, that's not the right word, but you can teach it and you can tell all the in and outs of it, but they can walk out of there and not have a vision. It's got to be caught. I'm going
to say something controversial, like genuinely controversial in 2024.
I was waiting for that.
And I normally try to not stir controversy on certain things. I might poke fun at things, but I will say definitively, especially after consuming all the information I have. Number one, I'm still not going to support one side or the other, period, because I have deep-seated beliefs about where our focuses should be, and they should be here and then expand out. Mm-hmm. So to whatever your influence, and you could drag your influence anywhere. So those people, those foreign fighters, for example, they're dragging their influence to those places to go fight. That's their calling. That's not my calling. But I will say definitively that I believe the Russians, I don't know if it's as a culture or at least as their government, does not value human life at all. And as a result, I could never support that country. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I ever supported them. Maybe I was a little more on the fence about it. I'm not saying that I absolutely love Ukraine. I'm not flying a flag. I'm just not going to do that. I know that is controversial, especially some people that we know. But I will definitely say I could never support the Russians because of the way that they view human life. I'm sorry. There's no way you could be a Christian and have that belief. And there's no way that you could be a responsible person and have that kind of disregard for human life. Yep. And they are absolutely 100% showing it. And I don't mean just because of the nature of war and fighting a war. That is a separate topic that I'm perfectly well-versed and willing to go into nuance about. But their wanton decision to throw away life is ridiculous.
Well, here's another thing that
It's ridiculous.
you saying that in the politically correct world we live in, we can't say that. We can't say that.
Yeah.
And I asked somebody told me I can't make the comment about this guy's a migrant.
Oh,
And that's what he does. He goes from Florida to New York picking fruit in there. He's a migrant.
That is migrant.
And so you can't make him. You'll brand him with the name migrant. And I said, okay, well, what is this? I happen to be eating the apple, and he said it's an apple. I go, you cannot possibly tell me that's an apple when this apple is a very specific kind of apple, and you didn't say that.
Oh, yeah.
You just said apple. You branded that apple. So you're going to tell me that I can't call things a spade a spade?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you can't even say that. That's horrible. And so
That's crazy.
we get
That's
to a
nonsense.
place where the world, cultural,
Yeah.
is trying to close us in on just their terms, their narrative. And so you say a Russian doesn't value life. Oh, that's horrible. You are now branding. Give me a break.
Yeah,
Please,
this is
give me a break.
nonsense.
Let's look at the stuff in reality
I mean,
and call it what it is.
They're going to make claims, and other people are going to make claims that they actually do value life. They might even make the argument that's why they're there. They're going to make the typical state argument that it's like, well, that's like just the nature of like war and combat, that you've got to risk lives in order to go do that. I'm fine with all those arguments as general arguments, but the way that they've displayed it and the way that they conduct business is absolutely inverse to this. They have decided from the beginning, for example, to use convicts. Their citizens are not, I'm not saying that none of their citizens are bearing the brunt of the war, but by virtue of using convicts, that is slave military. That's not,
no question. And you can't.
that is not an honorable military. That's obnoxious.
And when you have this wrong attitude about life, about the value of life and everything, you can't tell me that doesn't affect the Russians in that country.
Yes, that's right.
The country is going, well, we are under this thing that this is the way it is. No, it isn't.
No, it's
You're
not.
just in Russia.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
that
right.
way here.
No, it's
and then
not.
when someone stands up and says, we're not that way, we're not like, they get this world, politically correct, try to cram that down our throats so we can't act that way or talk that way. And so what happens is the truth gets covered up.
No, of course it does.
Look at, like right now, today, we're talking about all this crap that's going on in America, and everybody's trying to find the truth.
They were saying, like, for example, in that documentary that I was watching, they were trying to say, and I get the nature of war, so I've read The Art of War, and I found it to be one of the most valuable books. I think I actually bought a recent copy, a super valuable book. And one of the things that is like a big aspect of war is they call it fog of war. And in modern era, it's not actually a modern thing. It's always been around. There's always information warfare anytime there's a war. And so they were invading, or let me use a little bit. I don't want to say the word invading. I'm trying to be much more objective about it. They were taking over the city of Mariupol in this video, and they were literally bombing and blowing up and rocketing and shelling all sorts of civilian structures, to include hospitals and maternity wards and all this kind of stuff. So then they were recording it. That's like the nature of this PBS special. The guy is like literally filming this war happening during his time in Mariupol. And so he's sending this stuff out. And so later the media is basically asking like a Russian ambassador, hey, what do you have to say about bombing this maternity ward? He says, oh, it's all misinformation, right? So they're basically blowing smoke, and they're doing the political game saying that, and they have the evidence. It's like, it's not like many of the other things where they tried to claim this. It's like these cameras are rolling like nonstop. Now, I also showed my kids, other than this video, I said, okay, the last question I asked them like very basic questions, like what country is this? What year is this? And this kind of stuff. And when the last question I asked them was, is this real? Is the video I showed you actually real? And how could you know? And it started kind of bringing up the complexities of like, how the hell do you know if a video is real or not? You do have some sense of an intuition, but I don't think that's good enough. So I showed them on Google Earth. I went and they have updated imagery of Russia or of Ukraine. You better believe that place is blown up big time.
Oh, bad.
You go to the cities and you can see too, they're decimated. Most of the towns in the east are just blackened, charred remains.
Yeah, sure.
You literally look at most of the fields out there, there's potholes everywhere from artillery. They just have blown eastern Ukraine to absolute bits. Yeah. And so the reason why that's relevant, ever since I left Afghanistan, I realized, I think I told you this, the average person is not prepared to fight the information warfare. And one of the ways that you have to do it, or an intel person does it, is they take multiple different, like I asked my kids, does Google work with PBS? Not really. They might to some degree, but did Google conspire with PBS, that PBS puts out this super elaborate fake video that goes on and on and on, and meanwhile Google put a bunch of fake images up? No, of course not. That's not likely to be the case. And so you can cross-reference this and go, no, they've absolutely decimated these cities. And so we can see that from where we are now, and so that we know that that is like definitively true, and we can go from there. That doesn't tell you who's right, who's wrong, or anything like that. But I will say leveling a city is pretty...
Well, I'm going to go... All that you're just saying, I want to apply it to us today.
Yeah.
I think people have to really take a look at where you're coming from, because when I sit and talk to a Arabic person in Jordan, or I talk to a Russian person in Russia, or a Ukrainian, which I have because trucking, I met all these different people.
Yeah, I bet.
And I sit and I talk to them. I realize they're to some degree, they're a product of the country and the attitude of the country.
Hey, of course. That's a culture
So,
thing.
people, listen to me. Your leader is a product of some kind of place where he came from.
Yeah.
And so we have to, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to sit and say, well, he's from the, but you might want to take a look at the religion. I'm sorry, politically that's not correct, but you might want to take at that religion that they really are coming out of.
Yes.
Or take a look at the crowd or the group that they're coming from and saying, he's a product of that group. He's not just in that group. There's something about him that says he's in that group. And if that's the truth, you might want to take a look at that and say, maybe this leader, if he's a leader, we have to take it with a grain of salt. He's really doesn't value human life. He really doesn't value the Bible. He really doesn't. You got to be careful about that. These things are very real happening.
They are very real.
Midst right now. And if you don't have a leader that's got a heart, well-read, enthusiastic, ready, willing to be a part of the God's kingdom, you got a problem. You got weird people out there from weird places.
It's funny. I mean, okay, let's dig into this a bit. I mean, when you're saying that and you're rattling off, I'm like, okay, is Putin any of these? I'm like, I think he's all of these. He's definitely enthusiastic. He is definitely well-read. But it's funny you bring this up, because the crux of what you're talking about there was about the product of where they came from. And for sure, Putin came from he used to be a KGB agent, and
he's a thug.
He used to do, yes. He used to be an intelligence thug, and that's his thing. Now, this is where I'm like, I have more hesitations about just saying blanket statements that I don't know, but I have reasonable belief that he cares about his country and his people and things like that. But I don't think that his values are aligning to things that they really ought to be. And one of which is they claim to be Christian, and that's just nonsense. Yeah. The reality is, I mean, it's super simple. One of the major arguments for going into Ukraine, first of all, they've actually been at war since like 2014, and somehow no one knew about it. That there's literally been a Donbass war since like 2016. And that's
the rumors of war that happened that nobody heard. Then they get a rumor and they say, oh, they've been doing this for... Yeah.
So then one of the big things of like, okay, well, why Donbass and all that kind of stuff? And one of the things that they were trying to say was like, hey, we are trying to like liberate these areas because they're underneath this kind of, Western, maybe globalist kind of under control. And these people are really like more like Russians, and they're like pro. And you go and you look at it. This political situation is way more complex than most people are prepared for. That's why people stay on the surface. But the reality is, though, is like, okay, so you're saying that you are trying to free this people from the Ukrainians, but you destroyed all of their villages. You destroyed their cities.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It is nonsense. The number of people that the Russian military has killed, that it's crazy to think about. In 2014, they had this big election, and the country was really polarized into two countries. This is not uncommon. This happens all the time. And there was like the eastern portion, and they're kind of, I don't want to call them pro-Russian, but some people argue that. And then on the other side, it was like pro-West. And so it came to head that this eastern person basically won the election, and there was like this big referendum or whatever, like and legislation. Putting all that to the side, that's kind of where this really like broke the straw that broke the camel's back. But what's interesting about that is you look at how this person was elected, it was deeply divided. The more West they were, the more that they voted for like the Western candidate, and the more Eastern they were, like pretty much all of the Eastern districts, they voted for that candidate. Those people are the ones that got blasted in smithereens by the Russians. Just period.
Well, to bring this in a biblical kind of sense, if I may, you've heard of the terminology, the elders at the gate, or hear the counsel of the elders at the gate. Usually we're talking about the elders of the city at the gate discussing stuff. And the reason why they said elders of the gate, it's in the Bible, in the Old Testament, is because the older generation, the older people, have gotten past the in crowd and are concerned about the kingdom or the country. Now, at that time, they were concerned about their country. I get that. But the whole principle of it was the elders of the gate, like in this church that we're in, Dennis and Scott and a couple of us old guys got together and talking, and we're talking beyond what the church is doing, we're talking beyond what Mountain City is. We're trying to, share, and we want to share with others and with the pastor some of the things we see that are not just because we're in the group, but because we see more than just what's... And it's the same
you've seen a lot of different stuff.
And it's the same with this thing with the Russia. And when you talk to the older people generation, they're past Ukraine, they're past Russia. They go, wait a minute, what's really important here is what they're trying to say, what they're trying to share. And no one's hearing them, or you don't hear it at all, because they don't want you to. Yeah. And they don't want us elders to get together and talk and make comments about the church or leadership or whatever, because you're seeing things. You're not on the in crowd. You're not in the honeymoon. You're not in the euphoria of our gig, of our yay rah rah siskumba. You're not a cheerleader, and we're saying we went through cheerleader days. We've been there, done that. We got the T-shirt, but now we're trying to go past that to a place of saying, we leaders in the kingdom of God have something to say to the church and to the leaders of today, right here in River City, right here. And that's hard because I see things and I have to, when they do stuff, I used to do that. I know better now. And so, you see, I'll give you an example. Samuel kept hearing a voice of God, but didn't know what to do with it. Got up, told Eli said, go back and listen. He heard it again. Finally, Eli said, even though his eyes were dim, he couldn't see far, he said to Samuel, go and listen to that and do it. Be a certain way about this. And Samuel was. And he got guidance from a leader that could see past just what he was doing. Because Eli had a lot of problems, and he had two evil sons, Hophni and Phinehas. He really wasn't on the mark, but he was an older person, a little past all this rah-rah siskumba for Israel, and saying to Samuel. And it ended up Samuel became a leader whose words never fell to the ground because he had guidance from elders. So what I'm saying is somebody that's got to been there, done that, has got to be able to have a voice, or we lose something very valuable. I mean, I'm not a specific pastor of a church. I could, and I would speak specifically to that church. I could, but I'm past that. Yeah. I will do it if God tells me to do it. I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying I see a little bit beyond that, and so do some of these leaders, and we'd like to encourage you to get in on the kingdom of God, or if we take it to the real world of Russia and Ukraine and everything, we want to encourage you to look at this a little more squarely than just being a thug and overcoming and whatever fame you want and what's your agenda. There has to be more. The greater picture, you said. Yeah. That's what the vision is. The vision is a bigger picture. than what you have. And that's hard for me because I want to get across a bigger picture. You know, that's what I'm trying to do.
Did you get that off your chest? Are you good now?
It's not new. It's not new for
No,
me.
you're it's funny because
You know what I like about you? I'll just tell whoever's listening. What I like about Mike is I don't compare myself with Mike in the brain department. I don't even compare myself with Mike at all. It's hard to get to a place where you don't have to judge. I don't judge him at all, but I enjoy his insight and intellect, and I'm trying to bring it to the practical experiential.
Oh yeah, no.
Because that's what I've been. That's where I've been. And so it's a good combination, I think. I hope you guys enjoy that, whoever's listening.
Well, and
whoever turned us off, turn us back on.
and I mean, I definitely appreciate that because I definitely don't bring these things up as like heady topics because they're actually very real. I mean, before you came in, about 10, 20 minutes before, like I said, I showed my kids this documentary, and we watched half of it, and they're going to watch the next one. There are dead bodies in there. They show people who are in the process of dying who then die. I mean, it's real life. And the reason why...
What's it called? I'm sorry?
It's a PBS special.
Oh, yeah.
You can look at PBS Ukraine.
Whatever, yeah.
It's like an hour and a half long.
Pretty heavy, yeah.
Totally recommend everybody watch it. If you are a mom who has had kids, I don't really recommend it because there's definitely a bunch of stuff with like kids and like moms and stuff, and that's not nice. It's pretty intense, so you got to be prepared for that kind of stuff. But it's a good people perspective of what's going on, and I taught it as a history lesson because it's history happening now. This is actually happening now. It was 2 years ago.
And I might ask you, why don't you protect them from seeing that?
Yeah, I would never do that because I would never. I tell people all the time, like people, you know, they do like the Santa Claus thing and all that, and I'm not like judging people, but I have a particular view of where I am taking my family and my kids, and I could never risk telling them a lie or pretending that there is like some kind of thing that if there's any chance that I could risk having the ability to say true things to my kids of any caliber and they not believe it, I'm not willing to risk it. It's not worth the risk.
Actually, I agree with you there because I think a lot of people who protect their Christian group, protect people from one leader or one doctrine. When somebody says, have you ever listened to Joel Osteen? Yeah, a lot of time. What's the big deal? Have you ever listened? And they're all upset about some people I listen to, and I read Calvinists and I read Arminianism and I read this and I read that. And, well, you know, you're subject. I protect my kids from that because it's wrong thinking.
So I'm not.
And I'm saying to them, you're not protecting them.
No,
you're
not.
actually exposing them.
Yeah.
Because later on they're going to hear. What they're going to do with it when they get it.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Real quick, you brought that up. I just came across this person. Is the controversy with this person? Are they like gay or something? Joel Osteen. What's the deal with this person?
I think it's a watered down gospel is their big cry.
That's the big issue.
He never talks about.
I couldn't figure out what the issue.
He rarely says Jesus. He rarely talks about the blood of Jesus and everything. And yet his dad was a gospel hard nosed gospel. I know him. I knew his dad.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a big difference there, but.
This is a reality though. In order to deal with this complex world, which by the way isn't out there, it's here now.
Yeah.
We have already talked about this. Why do these leadership vacuums exist? Because we exist in a world. We don't choose this world. A world that is very fractured, and my neighbor here, my neighbor over there, they are very different than me. There's a lot of things I can very easily connect with them, but they do not. Even the amount of things that we have so much in common, it seems like we are worlds apart. And to make those connections and to cross over, you got to be able to hear these things and be able to handle the nuances that, well, okay, I'm going to take, there's a little bit there, I'll take that. The rest is garbage. Over here, I'm going to take a little bit of that and apply it.
Yeah. Well, here again, your kids are a little more well-rounded when it happens because it's going to hit them. You're not going to protect them.
No.
Ultimately, it's going to come. The world is out there. And I used to say this to my son. He was kind of braggadocious. I said, someday somebody's going to box your ears because you got this attitude. You're picking a fight. And you know what? One day a kid boxed his ears good. He came in crying, and I go, now what did I say? I tried to protect you from that. I didn't protect you from it at all.
No, I think it goes back to the parable of sower. All this is it's just seeds. At the end of the day, it's seeds. There's a vision that I'm trying to get my kids to catch. They're very young, but they're attempt to catch it. They aren't catching any vision, I assure you, at 9 or 7 years old. They're just not. Yeah. But after enough seeding, I believe that they will eventually understand, and they will be.
I am totally agreement.
They will be able to understand without having to go through certain kinds of experiences, which I do not think are actually needed to go through. They might be. I don't control that, but I can control what I see.
And I think when your kids say, no, we don't do that, you go, man, that feels good. Because now they're saying we. They're not just saying, oh, no, I don't do that because Dad kept me from that, so I run away from that. Well, what good is that to you?
That is
when
a good point.
Say, we see that, but we have decided this, now they're catching it.
That's a really good point.
You follow me?
Yeah.
And that's what people do in the church.
I need to be listening to that.
When they start talking you got to be happy. Somebody's catching the drift. Somebody's getting a big picture. When they just say, well, I don't like this, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going there, and I'm not going. I'm like, well, you're so self-centered that you don't get it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I've been passionate about this. You don't get it when it's just I. What about we? Where's the we? But when they start saying we, and I can say this right now, we are trying to talk about leadership vacuum and the ups and downs of leadership. We get it. And we're trying to share it with you.
And I mean, I appreciate just talking about it in general as like good reminder. It's like it's kind of like church, right? So you go to church, it is kind of a good centering point for like the week. You get kind of, to some extent, you get reset. I know some preachers kind of complain about it, like, oh, you need to have church every day. I got it. Like, I very much understand that message. But, it is good to have, this is why you have traditions, and you do have the, I don't want to say like the pomp and circumstance, but you have like ceremonies and stuff, because it's like, okay, we're going to bring it back. We're going to get centered. This is like the thing. Yeah. And so the good thing about like a podcast like this and talking to you guys, especially if you are already leading and you kind of understand, it's a kind of a re-centering on these things to go out and not forget these. Like our topic, which I don't even know what it was anymore. Oh, enthusiasm. It wasn't enthusiasm. It was
not being lazy.
Lazy, yeah. Laziness as a pitfall. It is very true, and laziness applies to like your thinking and all this kind of stuff. All kinds
of aspects, yeah.
And so, definitely here to help other people, but at the same time, I can appreciate that at least we're kind of going over and mulling these topics.
We're here to share it with you, and. I'm not here to share it with you. We're here to share it with you. It's a we right now. And it's a good thing. I mean, I don't feel slighted. I don't feel like I'm not doing something. I feel like we're accomplishing something.
Yep.
And would you please let us know?
Yeah, I would definitely say, comment on these things if people haven't commented already. I guess in theory, I could have probably monitored this with my phone.
If they comment, we can't see it.
No, not at the moment. Here, let me put the image on you. There you go. And then I can step out and around and get my phone.
Oh, you can? Yeah, well, while he's checking that, I do appreciate you all sharing with us. That makes a difference for us because we feel like there's a connection there, or we're getting somewhere. And I was going to share with him a couple of things I experienced in the church about leadership. We'll do it next time when we get together. That will maybe allow us to see some things we didn't see before about a leader. It's very important to understand what the leader is. And God does not ignore the fact that there's a leader. He does raise up men to be certain leaders in certain capacities. There's no two ways about it.
So we don't have comments, but we do have emoticons. Because that was the thing we brought up when we first started.
Emoticon.
Yeah. You got your wife. Apparently, she finds you funny.
She's laughing at me, and
then we get some
thumbs up.
Yeah, we got some thumbs up. So
okay, so that's better than nothing.
I guess we're hitting something. There's 3 thumbs up. There's no thumbs down. So we're 3-0. And a laugh.
I enjoy this. It's great to express it and get it off our chest and see if maybe it'll pick up somewhere.
Yeah, I'm intending on us getting back on schedule, doing 11 o'clock Eastern every week on Friday. Trying not to miss this because we've got a lot of topics to get through.
Oh my goodness,
we've got a bunch here. There's a bunch that we haven't even touched on, but we're gonna show up and
we may even find one that we both disagree on. And we'll share our aspects, and we'll go from there, and we can still be friends.
Yes, we'll find out. We'll find out how far apart we actually are. It's funny you mentioned the migrant thing. I was going to make a joke about how, if you want to look at the word migrant, you could say many people who are from New York are migrants because they migrate down to Florida and then fly back.
I migrated to here.
Well, the one thing with migrant, though, I would normally say a migrant is a person who goes to and from. Yeah. They're normally moving. They're not normally. I know the normal term means like the normally used would be like, okay, they're just a person who's coming from point A and they're going to point B. Yeah. But I would say to some extent, my family for quite a while, I would consider migratory, and a lot of people don't realize that they are actually migratory because they have never stopped and think about it. That they, for example, they migrate from opportunity to opportunity. They'll move from place to place based on where the jobs are and this or that.
That is migrating, but that's not the migrant I was talking about.
I know.
You're to and from kind of guy.
You're talking about like, really far away and then, coming, but they're coming for the same thing. It's just maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit more grand to some extent.
They go from one fruit to another fruit. It's really work related,
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Migrant farm labor.
Yeah, they're migrate from one farm to another, depending on the weather.
Yeah.
And the season, the harvest.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a really good use of it because the kind of classical use of the word migrant or to migratory is actually following food.
Yeah.
So you look at like birds. I'm trying to remember what the name of that bird is. I can't remember, but it flies. It's kind of crazy. It basically migrates from south to the north following the mulberries. And so the mulberry harvest going all the way from the south all the way to the north. And so you can tell when the mulberries are ripe because the birds are
and
there.
They're going 12, 14, 1,500 miles every year. Don't mean anything to them.
Yep.
What it means is I got to find those food.
Yes. And some people would argue, we're getting sort of off topic. Some people would argue that like people should be migratory and that they ought not stay in the same place. And one of the valuable things about that, which we've actually been talking about here, is that you have perspective. You know different things. Like I've been to the deserts of Afghanistan. I've been there. I've been to Japan. I've been to like South America and many places. I've been to like the jungles of South America. I've been to the deserts of South America.
But were you in the desert with a horse with no name?
Sure. I don't know if I'd call it a horse, but vehicles certainly they were never named. But back to this point that you're kind of bringing up that you've seen these things, the downfall. There's a lot of positives for putting deep roots in a location, but there's also some massive negatives. And one of those negatives is you're not able to pull from a diverse set of things that will make you far better off.
Yeah.
And by traveling, and that's a lot of people who have spent time in the military. Like if you're in the Army, you've probably been in Germany. You've probably been in like the central parts of the U.S. And they're very different. And you gain a lot of perspective that a lot of people don't.
Definitely. And I couldn't get over the culture in Jordan. Well, actually in Israel, if you're not a Jew, you're a Muslim, but you're in Israel, and you're a woman, you're not second-class citizen. You're fourth or fifth class because you're a Jew first, and then you're a Jewish man second, and then you're a Jewish wife third, and then you're a neighbor that's more important than whatever, and then maybe you get to be a Muslim or a Muslim's wife. It's so down the road that they don't even allow you to own your own property more than 49 years. In the 50th year, you got to turn it all back. You got to buy it all over again. You only buy it for 49 years, and then you turn it over.
Yeah.
If somebody's thinking, And that's a culture. That's a different thing that you have
Well,
to
if
deal
I'm not
with.
mistaken, Jordan's also it's like a king. Like there's a king.
Jordan, Jordan is very different from Israel because it's under a king.
Yeah, it's under a king.
So it's a different monarchical thing, and basically, you don't find anything like Americans over here complaining about the president. They all love their king.
Yeah.
Don't say nothing about something against the king. That'll be those shoot you.
Well, what's kind of funny too about this is these are really good experiences when you go on them because it gives you the experience to compare what you know, and you compare that, and you can see where you see the similarities. You really start to hit like on what's an actual person.
Yeah.
Like what are the people things? So like picking up the Bible is a really good example of this because you're talking about people who are many thousands of years before you. So right out of the gate, everything you see in this room here, other than maybe the blankets up there, none of this was invented. Maybe those shoes, except the soles on them, because that's like sheepskin or whatever. Yeah. But none of this stuff anybody could have conceived of. So it's very different. And then two, the cultures, let alone where they are in the world today, but being back within time, we're talking very different. But funny enough, you can pick up this book and you can see like, I know that guy. I've seen people try that. And you can see that it's like, okay, well, this is really the story of people.
Yeah. But getting back to a lot of other things we said, but we're getting more knowledgeable of our world. Complicated. This world is not like it used to be. When I grew up, everything was black and white. I lived on the lake. I worked on the farm. That's pretty much it. You go uptown and that was the same. You might live uptown, but that was it. Now it's totally complicated.
It's the information thing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that in the past, information came from, and I say in the past, in the relatively recent past, it came from books, came from magazines and just print paper, and potentially, let's say, word of mouth traveling from like town to town. That's a very constrained amount of information.
But now it's migrated into everything we do.
Bro, I can tell you right now we can go put on like virtual reality helmets and go hop onto YouTube and we can be in the Ukrainian war today. Without even having to go over there. I mean, you could go over there, or you could just pop in and you're in there right now. You could flip the channel and now you're doing Lego documentaries. Or you flip the channel again and you're learning about the most intricacies of McLaren race cars.
Cooking.
Yeah. And so then iterate that times 1,000,000,000,000,000,000 trillion different concepts and you can jump into it. That's how much information is being passed. You could go find 1,000,000 channels that are misinformation or, just propaganda is really the right term here. Propaganda for one side of a conflict. And then you can go find another 1,000,000 channels of propaganda on another side of a conflict. And then there's like 100 million conflicts out there. So we're drowning in information.
You're starting to feel a little insignificant? I got a good news for you. The Bible says that your hairs are numbered. And that doesn't mean I know you got 3 billion hairs. It means that this hair is 127 and this hair is 1,248. And your hairs are numbered. And some of those numbers fell out, but he knows what number this hair is.
Yeah.
That's pretty intricate.
I like how you said that because the truth is you feel insignificant, but you are not.
You're not. You're not. And God's love kind of brings you right up there where you need to be.
So I think we should cut it at that point.
Okay.
We're definitely interested in your comments. Comment back on it. We'd love to actually take those comments and turn it into like the next episode or something like that.
Yeah, you never know. We might just do that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Well, come join us. We do this live. Right now, we're going to start doing live 11 o'clock Eastern on Fridays, live on Facebook, and then we're going to repost it back on YouTube, and that's what we're going to do from now on.
Thank you very much.
All right. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you soon.
See you later.